Hello and welcome to another episode of Malachi's Message podcast, Toxic Mold Sucks. I'm Elizabeth Kreit. I am the co-founder and executive director of Malachi's Message. Today, co-hosting is Emily Rochelle. She is our board chair and co-founder of Malachi's Message. And today we are so excited. We have a guest that we have been waiting months and months to talk to, Leah Segedie. She is a woman that's amazing. You'll find out she's literally like superwoman. She helps women make safer consumer choices for their families. She's a consumer watchdog, author, activist, community organizer, and strategist. She founded the award-winning consumer activist website, Mamavation.com, and the leading eco-friendly influencer conference, ShiftCon social media conference. She also wrote Green Enough, Eat Better, Live Cleaner, Be Happier, all without driving your family crazy. And this has scientific findings and helps families make safer and greener product choices. Leah, thank you so much. We are so honored to have you visit with us and just talk to us. We're thrilled.
Wow, that chick sounded really impressive. Was that me?
That was you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks for your patience getting me on as well.
Oh, of course. We need to give a shout out to Lauren Cloud because she will watch this. And she is the one that connected both Emily and I to Mamavation. She is a huge fan and she was so bummed she's missing this. So hopefully, Lauren, we do you justice with this interview because this was all you're doing and we're making it come to fruition. We're super grateful.
I'm pumped. I'm pumped. Let's do this. Let's try not to depress people too much, but let's do this.
I have a question, Leah.
Yeah, of course.
How did Mamavation even get started? Like, what made you do this?
Wow. Okay. So I'm trying to think how many years ago. It was 16 years ago when I first started working online. And we had a death in the family. My father had passed away. And I was pregnant with my first son. And I had my whole life planned out in my head of what I was going to do, where I was going to go, You know, I got pregnant, I got married. Well, I got married first, then I got pregnant. It doesn't even matter now, but that's what happened. And then a few months later, I found out my father had mesothelioma cancer, which is from asbestos exposure. And it changed my entire life. And I quit my job. I was working in PR at the time for a workers' comp company. It's the worst job ever, but you know, that's a totally different story. So I quit my job and took care of my father. You know, I drove every day to, Glendale, which is where my parents lived, and, watched over him, took him to all of his appointments. My mother was also, helping my father as well, but my mother was dealing with her own, medical issues, and she was just really depressed about it. And so it was me. And it totally changed the trajectory of my life. After my father passed away, he got to see his first grandson be born, though, by the way, and that was really special for all of us. And then after he passed away, I had an uncle and an aunt pass away and another uncle pass away. And it was all based on health type issues. Most of it was cancer. Some of it was other types of things, but it totally changed the trajectory of my life. And two things were really important to me. It was family and health. Became the two most important things to me. So I said, I want to stay home and raise my kids. And then I tried doing that and I got really bored, like really bored and really depressed, And and at the time I had also lost over 100 pounds. I know that's like, oh, by the way, let me throw that one in there. I'd lost over 100 pounds and I was just bursting at the seams to help other women, with health issues and encourage them and just be there as like a sister, because I really felt like I can't be the only person who's going crazy. I can't be the only person who's, sitting around and doesn't want to do laundry all day, has no one to talk to. So I started up this online business and it was just the stars aligned and it just became huge, and it was at the right time when being a quote unquote mom blogger was a niche. So this was like a long time ago before women ruled the internet, which is basically what happened. But I came in and I was niched in a niche. So I was like, not just mom bloggers or cared about women, right? Stay-at-home moms, digital moms, but women that were into health. And so I was like super niched. And that's how it started. And right away, I had a lot of people that wanted to come write for me who were doctors and, different types of health professionals and dietitians. And we also were originally on the Ning platform. And I don't know, this probably totally dates me, but if you go back like 16, 17 years, Ning was huge. It was kind of like Facebook, but you could have your own little mini Facebook. And so that's originally what we were. And then let me see, officially Mamavation started, like as Mamavation, the site was, I want to say 14 years ago. So that was officially when we started. And of course, it was different back then than it is today. It's morphed and changed based on myself in the space and what I've learned and how I've personally grown. So you can see that. But we went full blown non-toxic 10 years ago, I want to say 8 to 10 years ago. And I'm so lucky to be informed by some of the top scientists in the world. Pete Myers is my main advisor. He is the man that coined the phrase endocrine disrupting chemical. We would not have this type of science if it wasn't for him and some of his colleagues organizing the scientists, reaching out to the EPA and all the government officials and stuff like that, and literally starting this section of science that looks at hormone disruption, not cancer. You know what I'm saying? So it's a totally different mind game. And so Pete is one of my main advisors. I also have some amazing green chemistry advisors that are heads of all kinds of things, like Terry Collins is one of my main advisors. He's a god in the world of green science. He's the director of the Department of Green Science at, I'm totally blanking. Carnegie Mellon. Thank you. Sorry, I don't know why that left my mind. Carnegie Mellon. Too much coffee is probably what that was. So Carnegie Mellon University. And so any random question I have to him, but I have so many advisors, and based on learning as much as I can from these really well-rooted, important people that really know what they're talking about, I have been way ahead of the curve. And so what I decided to start doing was, investigations, because I was, home saying, or I'm in the grocery store and I'm saying, well, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Well, what is good, right? And it would drive me nuts. And I'm the kind of person who is just crazy enough to make a data sheet, put all the ingredients in it and figure it out. And then I realized, why am I doing this just for myself? I need to share this with women, because other women really need this information. So if you go to Mamavation, what we do now is every week we do investigations, and we put one out about every week. Now, we're not always doing PFAS testing. Sometimes we're just doing it based on the ingredients that we're given and those types of things and what we know, and we email the companies. But every week we look at something new. So last week, what was it that we did? We did waffle irons the other week. And so if I'm looking at waffle irons, I'm thinking about something like surfaces, food contact surfaces. Now, what do we have to look at with, waffle irons? We get all of the waffle irons. We put as much of information as we can in a database. And then I start asking questions, and we might have to go back and forth to the companies to ask them specific things. But, you have bad, better, best, basically. And so that people can choose and select what is best for them based on their lifestyle, their needs, how much money they have, et cetera, et cetera. So we make it really easy for people to purchase products that are non-toxic and inform them as to what to look for. So that's every week for us. And we started doing investigations on PFAS in 2020. And I know we're going to talk a lot about this, but how that came about was period underwear. There's a reporter, her name is Jessian Choi, and she writes for the Sierra, which is the Sierra Club's, news broadcast. And she sent some period underwear away to Dr. Graham Peasley. And he's this amazing scientist at the University of Notre Dame. And he found PFAS in both of those panties. And so they wrote a whole story on it. Well, everyone's coming to me and they're like, well, Leah, there's more than just 2 brands. There's 20 brands of period underwear at the time. So this was in 2020. There wasn't as many now. I think there's 40 or 50. But, which ones are the best? And I'm like, I don't know. We got to start testing because there's no other way to figure it out. So I started sending period underwear to the lab, and I was shocked. was very shocked because originally one of the brands that we had tested initially, we thought they were going to be clean as a whistle, and it turned out that they weren't. And not only were they not clean, but they were out there with a change.org petition to try to get PFAS legal in period underwear. And so I thought, that's odd. Let me test the rest of the brands. And so that's what we did. Got my advisors to kind of hurdle around me to explain the science so that we were able to give it to you guys in a really real, honest way, but then also give you data of what we found. And we started that with period underwear in 2020. Well, the outcome of that was, it was just incredible. There were so many women that were so thankful that I was doing this, that I was actually doing my own consumer studies based on what they wanted to know. See, a lot of times what happens with these scientific studies or these NGO studies is they create these consumer studies to solve a problem that they have, like to plug something in lobbying, to be able to say something to an elected official to further something, right? It's not necessarily what women want or what women need. And my stuff is exactly the opposite. My stuff is based on what my audience tells me that they need. And that's the most important thing to me, solving the problems of women. That's all I care about. Do I care about the problems of husbands? Nope. I care about women because that's truly who we're supporting, right? And we're still the ones home. We're still doing the shopping. And yes, I know we're in a better society now where men do pick up a lot of strings, but it's still primarily something that women are doing. We're still in those central roles. And so I'm still serving women, and that's all I end up doing. And I keep telling people whenever they say thank you to me, I said, it's my pleasure to serve you, because really it is. I'm staying home with my kids and working from my house, and I don't have to see anybody if I don't want to, because, that's the way I like it. I can wear my yoga pants all day. I can wear no makeup. I can do whatever I want. You know what I'm saying? But I do a lot of work. I'm actually kind of workaholic, but I get to stay home and I get to serve women and I get to solve the problems of women, which makes me feel so good. It makes me feel like, like I'm doing something with my life, and I'm happy to do that. And so in terms of my PFAS investigations, we just weren't seeing enough coming from science. We weren't seeing enough of these investigations, these consumer studies coming from NGOs. And so I decided, I'm just going to do it. I've got all of the pieces. I have the really awesome scientific advisors. I write really well. I know a lot of people. We can crowdsource what needs to be tested based on the Mamavation community. We had all the pieces. So we just started running. And today I finished 12 of these consumer studies. So I'm gonna list them for you real quick so that you can trip out. Toilet paper, we found some PFAS in toilet paper. Dental floss, that was a big one that we dropped last week. Whoa, you have to see that. Baby strollers, we've tested baby strollers. We've tested, cooking oils, like 70 something cooking oils, pasta and tomato sauces, ketchups, parchment paper, athletic wear like your yoga pants. We found PFAS in the crotch of yoga pants. That went viral, by the way. Sports bras, green beauty makeup. That was a shocker. Bamboo flooring, period underwear. That's what we have done so far. What we have coming out very soon is tampons and feminine care pads, incontinence pads. We have toothpaste coming out and Band-Aids. So those are the 4 ones that I haven't released yet that I'm working and sending stuff off to the lab. But honestly, this is so fun for me because I'm nerdy and I love scientists. I totally fangirl over scientists and sit there like, oh, what else? You know what I mean? So I get to spend time with scientists. I get to serve my community. If I don't know, I'll find out. I don't know everything. But I've surrounded myself with some really amazing people, and our job is to serve.
So I first came across you when we were looking at my children's supplements, and Lauren, that's when she introduced me to you, because she said, have you looked at her list? And I was like, I don't know who this person is you're talking about. What do you mean list? And she's like, no, just read it. And I remember thinking, this is incredibly long. And then I got sucked in because you do write very well, but you're so factually based and you explain everything. And when we started looking at this, we started getting a lot more comments from parents who've gone through mold. they're like, we need something clean. We need something without chemicals. What are the best options? And we hear that all the time. And I went, oh my goodness, she's doing this. Like, she is finding these options. And I remember breathing a sigh of relief. I went to my kids' medicine cabinet and pulled out all their supplements and looked at your list of multivitamins and fish oils. And I went, oh, okay, good. Like, we're taking the right stuff. Like, it was such a sigh of relief, but I've sent it to so many moms who are like, well, where do we go find resources on what's good and not good? Where do we find out what's better and worse? And I'm like, oh, well, literally word for word, I'm sending you to this person that has a list that is those things. And so when you started doing these new studies, it's been amazing. Like, I've read through some of them and I can't thank you enough, because you're helping us who have gone through mold figure out how to ensure that our homes are still healthy. And like, we're ensuring that the things we put on ourselves as parents to take care of our kids, and like the floss, my girls love to floss, they're weird. And I remember looking at that going, oh, this is so helpful, because they both have dental issues, and going, well, we don't really want to make it worse. So which floss should I be using for them? So what you're doing really is, like you said, a step ahead of everybody else. And you're ensuring anybody in our community that we're able to still have a step ahead in ensuring that we keep our homes healthy and clean. So thank you on behalf of like literally the thousands of people going through mold right now. This is another resource where they can step in and go, oh, I can still be proactive and feel like I'm helping my family in small ways. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When we throw it up, I just wanted to warn everybody, we throw it up and that's when it's the most accurate, right? So check the date, right? And if something's 2 years, say something to me and I might be able to redo it. And we do a lot of updates on that as well. But we really, what I'm trying to do is exactly what you're saying. Like, I feel like I need to step in for all the women to be able to hold space for them and say, this is important to us. And no one was doing this. So I decided I had to. And again, it's solving my problems, but it's also solving your problems and the problems of the community. And I just really want to be of service, And so I always say, thank you for allowing me to serve. It's a pleasure to serve your family. I feel very strongly about that. I don't look at this as a job, it's a calling. And that's just the way it is. So it's a calling to support other women. Yeah.
Well, what is PFAS for people who don't know? For people that are listening and going, okay, y'all need to define this now. What does that stand for? What is that?
So PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. So it's a long word, right? But essentially what these chemicals are, there's over 12,000 of these chemicals. They've been around since the 1930s, but they were basically commercialized in the 1950s. It's all of the stain resistant, water resistant, grease resistant chemicals that we've been using in our lives for a long time. And a lot of this stuff because you have heard of Gore-Tex fabric, you've heard of Stainmaster carpet, you've heard of Teflon pans. These are chemicals that are incredibly useful. They push away oil, they push away water, and they're one of the strongest bonds in chemistry. Now, the problem is when you have a bond that's that strong, it's very hard to get rid of these chemicals, which is why they have the nickname forever chemicals. So think about PFAS, forever chemicals, and that's how I refer to them. Over 12,000 of them. It's a category. They're all different. It started with two chemicals, PFOA and PFOS. So you will see a lot of things on products that say PFO free. And if they say that on their product, I want you to scrutinize them a little bit more because they're only calling out one chemical and there's 12,000 of these suckers, right? And so the brands and products like to mess with us a little bit, and they use that marketing of PFOA free, and you grab it and you have no idea that you just grabbed something with a ton of Teflon in it or something, right? Because technically what they said was true, but the United States and most of the moms are not aware of this chemical category, but it's a really problematic one. And the reason it's problematic one is because of all the health impacts. It's really two things. It's persistence is a really big issue in the big scheme of things because it's impossible to get rid of at this moment. But it's also incredibly toxic. So one of the worst things that PFAS does, and they've done this from decades of research, they know this from decades of research, is reduction in immunity. And that's one of the big things. And that's what we definitely don't want. Definitely don't want it in a sea of COVID, right? Or any types of issues that are happening. You need your immune system. You need your immune system if you believe in vaccination or not. Either way, you need a healthy immune system to be protected. And that's what it really goes after. The other issue with perfluorinated chemicals is they are androgen mimickers, which means they mimic a type of testosterone called androgen. And women's bodies are a little bit more forgiving in terms of hormone disruption, but men's bodies are really not forgiving at all, because when androgen comes into the body of a man, his body will react by saying, we've produced enough, stop. And so actual testosterone slows down or stops when you have a lot of synthetic androgen, which is PFAS. So if you think in your head, what would happen if a little boy, a little baby, you know what I'm saying, in utero stopped producing testosterone at the right time? It's a lot of things. So affecting the growth, learning behavior of infants and older children. So it's tied with learning disabilities. It's tied with all kinds of things, behavioral issues. It's also, believe it or not, it actually does have the ability to make the penis smaller. So if a woman is exposed in pregnancy to a lot of PFAS chemicals, and remember, when you are pregnant, there's hormonal things that have to happen at the minute, at the second, at a very specific time, because, we've been through it before. It's like 9 months and every week something happens. And now, you got those little apps where you can figure out, this is happening, that. Those are the things that we're talking about can be disrupted. So, lower sperm count, smaller penis size. We've also have an increased in kidney and testicular cancers. It increases your cholesterol levels. It increases the chances of miscarriage for both men and women. So poor sperm quality and women will miscarry. It makes us gain weight. So like if you sell that to a woman, it's like has nothing to do with calories. And yet it can make your body work against you so that you're gaining weight and trying to lose weight and can't. And PFAS could be one of the issues. So it's linked to metabolic disease like obesity and diabetes, reduced vaccination response. I think I just talked about that, but they did a study looking at vaccines in babies. And the babies who had higher levels of PFAS in their blood had lower immune system responses to these vaccinations, which means you could get a vaccine and it might not work at all for you. And so that's why I'm saying your immune system is so important. It increases allergies and asthma in young children. I mean, it's kind of like Linda Birnbaum. She is one of my advisors, and she was the head of the NIEHS for the government for 10 years. And she says, and this is like, if she says it, it's like factual, like God said it, it has the ability to impact almost every organ of your body. And so that's where we're at with this chemical. It doesn't go away. It's persistent. So some of these chemicals build up and leave in a couple months. Some of these chemicals build up for decades in your body. And so it's really difficult to do body burden studies with these chemicals because they don't go away. There is one way we have found, and only recently, to get rid of them. And this is factual. And they ain't going to want to hear this, but this is it. Blood donation, particularly platelet donation, is a way that you can get rid of PFAS in your body. How do I know? They studied firemen, because firemen, their suits, they're exposed to more of these chemicals than a lot other type of people are, like plumbers, firemen, in different industries. They studied firemen and they started doing platelet donations like once a month. And that was able to bring down their numbers, but they have not found anything else that can do something like that. So that's what's going on with that. Now, where are we finding these chemicals? Because I just scared the hell out of you. And so now I got to tell you like where they are. Before I tell you where they are, okay, I'm going to tell you how to avoid them, but I want you to know how to mostly avoid them, because it is impossible to avoid all of these chemicals. They're just everywhere. They're in your home. It's just, you wouldn't even know. You'd have to send stuff to the lab to figure it out. So it's not there's not a total avoidance, but this is as best as we can for this moment. First place you can go is your cookware. Yeah, toss those nonstick pans. I know we love them because we don't like to scrub, and we love it when the egg just falls out of the pan and just, disappears, but this is Teflon is a form of PFAS. It's called PTFE. It's a polymer. So it is a PFAS, and all the nonstick pans are pretty much coated in Teflon or a PTFE type chemical. So you want to toss those. So that's number one. Because I'm Mamavation, I want to tell you also that the ceramic pans are not so much better. They are better, but they're not so much better because most of them are coated with nano titanium, which is problematic as well for gut health and all kinds of things, not as problematic as PFAS. So what do I recommend for cookware? I recommend the sane way to go is actually rotation. And this is what our epidemiologist says. There is no such thing as perfect cookware, no such thing. So I know everyone wants to say that, but there really isn't. Stainless steel has issues. Cast iron has issues. There's small issues, but what you do is you rotate between cast iron, stainless steel, glass, a non-coated ceramic, and we rotate in the kitchen, right? So we're not using the stainless steel constantly. We're not using you know what I'm saying? So rotation is your friend. If we're very lucky, there are some waffle irons, right? We did the waffle irons the other day because hello, where are you going to find a waffle iron with no coating, right? So this is where Mamavation goes in and looks at all the coating and what is the coating. And we were actually able to find some waffle irons that have a silicone based coating as opposed to a PFAS or a ceramic coating. So if you go to Mamavation, check that out. We found 4. We also found maybe 4 or 6 old fashioned cast iron, but for camping. Waffle irons. And then I just explain it to you. The best is your camping one, but this may not work in your kitchen. So the second best thing you do is get the silicone. The silicone isn't perfect because we don't know a lot about silicone. I know people are like, oh, but we really don't know as much as we should about silicone. And so my advisors have said, cold, not warm. But for this instance, for waffle irons, if you think about your daily drivers, things that you are eating daily, you're not eating waffles daily. So this is one of those instances where you can get something with silicone, throw it in because you're only using it once every 2 weeks or once a month. That is not as big of an issue as something that you're using daily. So those nonstick pans you're using daily, chuck them. The second thing is clothing. This is really tough because, we have children have uniforms, right? And they do stain resistance on those uniforms. Stain resistance, any type of stain resistance, a lot of the waterproofing, they're using PFAS chemicals on that. They're using a type of Teflon, a type of PTFE. And some of them are really high, some of them are low, but what you want to do is you want to avoid things that say stain resistant. You want to avoid things that are waterproof, they can be polyester, but they can't be polyester with a coating. So if you go to Mamavation, we've done jackets, we've looked at all of these companies. I'd love to be able to tell you which one is which, but there's so many thousands of brands in my mind. I can't tell you which ones were which off the top of my head. We've definitely covered that. So go to Mamavation if you want help with clothing. Textiles and fabrics. So this is furniture. This is your things that you are curtains and furniture and stuff like that. Furniture has a lot of stain resistance in it as well. So if you have furniture that's over a decade old, if you have carpeting that's over a decade old or rugs that are over a decade old, you likely have some PFAS on that furniture. So I would definitely recommend that you get something new if you can. Now, I know furniture is a scary, scary thing because it's so expensive, and you're right, it's so expensive. So I do have a cheap alternative that I use all the time. I actually wish you could see behind me because I've got some behind me, but IKEA is your friend. It's not expensive. They don't use PFAS. They don't use fire retardants, and the glues that they use in their fiberboard are less toxic. They're based on European standards, not American standards. America doesn't care if you die or not. Europe, however, because they have national health care, they have to pay for their mistakes. So they tend to not make as many as the United States does. So I recommend IKEA if you can. If you have one close by to you, that's where you can get a lot of furniture and things that you don't have to worry about. That's not expensive. If you want to spend the money, look for natural wool and, cotton and those types of things, and things that are certified GOTS organic or something like that. That is going to be a pretty penny, but your alternative is IKEA. Another big area here. Oh, and your carpeting. The one good thing I would say about carpeting is Lowe's and Home Depot a couple of years ago, they got rid of all the PFAS in their rugs and carpet. So you can go to Lowe's and Home Depot right now and buy carpet that is PFAS free. And I've actually tested some carpets that don't even market themselves as PFAS free, and I didn't find any PFAS in them. So in terms of carpeting, this is actually changing very quickly, and I'm really happy about that. But I would still recommend hard flooring for you, just because it's safer and it's better for your air quality and it's better for everything. Next is food packaging. Food packaging is a really big way that PFAS is going to get into your life. So California right now, if you live in the great state of California, which I do, I've been paying close attention to these laws. California is where laws happen that are good for you, that kind of trickle around to the rest of the United States. And starting on January 1st, it will be illegal for any company, fast casual, fast food, to give you food packaging that's over 100 parts per million organic fluorine. Now, that is actually a lot to me. So it's not perfect, but they're actually drawing a line in the sand, which is what I like. So we're not completely protected, but it brings it down from like 1,700 down to under 100, right? And so that's what we were looking at before. It was places like, what were some of the worst places? It was surprising. Sweet Greens and Chipotle were one of the worst fast food places. Why? I'll tell you why. Do you know the bowls that they have are brown, right? They look really sustainable and fun, like they've been recycled. They're actually made of cane sugar. And the cane sugar is held together by PFAS. So these companies that are producing these cane sugar bowls have been struggling to find alternatives. And so Chipotle and Sweet Greens is one of those fast casual restaurants has been using these brown bowls. I just recently tested, I keep testing them because I'm a pain in the ass. Sorry about that. But I keep testing them, right? Because my kids, I want to eat out too, right? So I'm of course eating the things that, and I'm grabbing the bowls and I'm sending things away. We just found it in Sweet Greens. So Sweet Greens still has an issue. We did not find it in Chipotle in Los Angeles. And I checked San Francisco too, but we have been finding it in places like DC. And in places like New York. So the East Coast, it seems to be a little slower with a lot of these laws. So, but food packaging is grease resistance. Grease resistance is really what this is about, water resistance. And so, they want to be able to keep that grease, from dripping and going wherever it is. So that's why it's in your food packaging. And it's one of the primary sources. So you're eating it. What is the secret to this? The secret to not getting PFAS in your body is to stop eating processed food. Now, I know it's tough because I'm not perfect. I'm not going to tell you I am. I'm not, I'm just, like I just said before, we go to Chipotle, I grab the bowl and I'm off to the races at the lab. So we're still eating at these places, right? And my family is not perfect, but we're trying our best to do 80-20, where I process most of our stuff in my kitchen. And the more you process your own food in your kitchen, i.e. cutting it up, stirring it, all of that stuff is processing, the better off you are, because I've tested a lot of food. And the more processed things are, the more things sneak in. And so be like grandma, right? Like grandma was all about cooking things from scratch. And so that's just kind of like where we have to go back to protect ourselves. How does this get in the food? Mostly from the packaging. A lot of times from fluorinated plastics. So packaging on plastics, maybe storage containers, there's numerous ways it could get in the food. There's actually over 5,000 indirect additives that are approved by the FDA that are these types of chemicals that the government recognizes will be in your food in trace amounts, but they don't really, tell you about it, but it is absolutely there. So this is one of the reasons that it's possible to find trace amounts of PFAS in your food, because all of these Teflon type chemicals are approved as indirect additives. They can use them in manufacturing. So that's why it's there. Another place, personal care products. This was a really tough one because there was last year, this big scientific study came out looking at actual makeup, but we're talking about makeup that you would go to Target to get, you go to Rite Aid and pick up the CoverGirl, they looked at all of those brands, and those brands, just as you would have thought, anything that is waterproof or long lasting. So those waterproof mascaras, ding, 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 right? Those long lasting foundations, ding, ding, ding. That's where they found it. But it wasn't just the regular makeup. I did my own study and only looked at green beauty makeup. Why? Because y'all ladies are only wearing green beauty. You're not, you're wearing CoverGirl if you have to, but y'all are getting it from other places. And so I wanted to test those brands to see what those brands were like. So we did, originally we did 83 products, but now I think we're up to 116 from 49 brands. And I think now we're up to like 60 brands. And at that time, when I first put it out, 65% of those products tested for indications of PFAS. Now, some of them were very low, but some of them were high and really surprising. And, that lit a fire under the green beauty industry because they were not happy to see what was in their makeup. But the answer is that the brands that were doing the testing and looking for it, those are the ones that were not caught with their pants down, so to speak. It was the brands that were not testing at all, relying on a middleman's like lab. So it's like, a lot of times they'll buy from suppliers and the suppliers will hand them over lab tests. And the lab test says it's the cleanest stuff since, ever, this stuff is clean. Well, if they believe them, then they could be passing off, ingredients that are dirty in some ways. So that's a lot of what was happening. They weren't doing their own testing. And so when I did the testing, boy, there were some ruffled feathers because the reality is y'all weren't looking, and now you need to start looking. And so that's kind of what happened. But the good news is that there's a lot of brands that we've helped to reformulate. That's another thing that I do behind the scenes. I very freely, and I mean free as in I don't charge brands for this. When they come to me and they have an issue, I help them find the contamination. I give them the best lab. And I do this all for free. And why do I do this for free? Because I'm making you ladies safer. And that is my goal. And so if I can get one green beauty brand to reformulate and find where they put their PFAS, guess what? Thousands of you are going to be safer. And that was me. Thank you very much. So I am happy to do that and then pat myself on the back, because that's a real way that I can make you safer. And I never talk to you, right? And I get the biggest kick out of doing that. I sleep really well at night. Let's put it that way. So we also did, we're doing tampons, feminine care pads. We did tooth floss the other day. Oh boy, my husband was using Oral-B Glide. Oh my God. So was my attorney. So was a lot of the men in my life, right? And so when I tested Oral-B Glide, we found over 240,000 parts per million in Oral-B Glide. That is the most I found of any brand of anything. And then 3 additional brands had over 70,000. So tooth floss is an area where that could be your single source of nastiness, right? So definitely go to my site, check out what we did. If you have Glide if your husband is using Glide, because men love Glide. I don't know why, but a lot of people love Glide. Throw it away. Just throw it away. Tell them that Leah said it'll shrink his penis. It won't really shrink his penis, but you can tell him that. But you can tell him it steals his hormones, though. For absolutely 100%, PFAS chemicals will steal his hormones, where his body will just stop producing it. So it lowers testosterone. So tell your husband, this lowers your testosterone, throw it away, and get a tooth floss that we recommend based on our tests. So we just did that recently. The other thing we did was toilet paper. Oh my God. So we did find it in some bamboo toilet papers, which was really shocking until I learned more about the process of toilet paper and how they make it. And it goes through 4 or 5 different manufacturers before it gets to you. And those whole processes, don't use Charmin either, because we found it in Charmin, but I'm sure you're not shocked about Charmin, but some of the bamboo brands you might be. So check us out for that. And I will be putting up tampons and feminine care pads within months. So next month we'll probably have tampons, and the month after that we'll be doing feminine care pads, because of course I'm all about saving your vagina, ladies, for sure. So the other place we want to look at is car wax and snowboard wax and guitar strings. So like there, it's not what you think, but there is like lubricants that you use for the guitar. There's lubricants that you're using for car wax and snowboard wax. Look for PFAS-free options. They're out there. You just want to find them. So that's another one. Drinking water. Drinking water is really difficult because if you live by an airport, which a lot of people do, or you live by a military base, or God forbid you live in Chemical Alley or something like that, you have been exposed to PFAS in your groundwater and your drinking water. Now, not all agencies are testing yet. Right now, the EPA and the federal government are starting to bring up five PFAS and putting them on the red list, but it's in process, right? California is way beyond them. We're at like 8 or 10 or something like that, but it's still in process because remember, there's 12,000 of these chemicals, right? So drinking water is a big source for people. What do I recommend? I recommend you getting a water filter, even if you don't have PFAS. And let me tell you why. They've only recognized or able to identify about 100 of these chemicals. That's it. 12,000 chemicals, and they can only test and identify about 100, and 100 in a really good commercial lab. And you're going to be paying $1,200 to $1,400 for that test, right? That's a lot of money. But so in a university lab, like one of my advisors, Scott Belcher, who actually develops ways to test for these new chemicals, he does that 150 in his lab. But that's it. You know what I'm saying? That's it. So what are we to do, right? What are we to do? This is exactly what I was faced with. How am I going to find the PFAS? There is a test called organic fluorine testing. And that's how I look for it, because fluorine is the element that all of the PFAS have in common. But it is the 6th most common element, but organic fluorine is man-made fluorine, and that is very rare. That's basically PFAS. It's PFAS, or it's pharmaceutical residue, which isn't cool, or it's pesticide residue. So that's what organic fluorine would have in its little bucket. So when I find 240 parts per million plus from Oral-B Glide, I'm actually finding 240 plus parts per million of organic fluorine. I'm not identifying. So these are all like these tests that I'm doing. They're like spot checking, so to speak, right? So it is starting to be held up in a court of law because states are using this type of testing. So the state of California, their food packaging laws are based on total fluorine, which is actually a easier test than what I'm doing. I'm actually looking for organic fluorine. They're looking for total fluorine. So they're looking for the whole kit and caboodle. So this type of testing is becoming standard, but it's one of those things where PFAS is difficult to test for. Like I said, it's really difficult to identify. It's impossible to test for if you're trying to identify a lot of these PTFE Teflon type chemicals. We just don't have assays for them. So drinking water, I was going to go back to drinking water. So what I said about drinking water was get a filter anyways, because there are thousands of these chemicals that they can't identify. What do you think is the likelihood of them being in your water? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, let's just think ahead here. I'm going to think for the big boys before they even get a chance to pull their pants up. And I'm saying, go get a water filter, right? Because you want to be prepared. Now, reverse osmosis and really good carbon filters are the ones that can grab PFAS. If you have questions, go to my site. We've actually done this whole thing on different systems that have been independently tested for water. And some of them are able to take out a maximum PFAS chemicals, and some of them can take out 2 or 3. So you want the maxed out ones. So drinking water. We talked about processed foods before. So again, I'm just going to reiterate, we did ketchup, pasta, cooking oil, and nut butters. And what I found was not what I thought I was going to find. When we did the spaghetti sauce investigation, I tested about 62 different spaghetti sauces. We found them in 4 brands. All of those brands were organic, probably the same manufacturer. I reached out to the Organic Trade Association because I'm the person that the Organic Trade Association sent to Europe to talk about, hey, this lady was part of us growing the organic industry. And so I was, telling the world about what we did in the United States for organic. So I'm the person who called them up and I said, hey, what's up with the PFAS I'm finding? And they basically said to me that It's not our problem. It's the FDA's problem. The FDA allows us to do it. And so that's part of the law. And so the organic industry does not have a way. They don't test the soil, and they don't mandate testing of packaging or manufacturing processing when it has to do with PFAS. So this is put me as, I've been like a thorn in the side right now of all these organic companies, because when I'm finding it, I'm like, hi, found something. You may want to take a look at it, and yeah, so some of them are happy, some of them are not so happy that I'm coming calling, but I'll tell you who this is important to. This is important to moms because we're feeding families, right? And organic industry, you need to start thinking about PFAS because, we're not happy with your lack of, finesse here, lack of rules. So that's for processed food. Check out Mamavation to see what we've done and what we've cleared. A lot of stuff with lubrications and additives. So like manufacturing plants. So like, how these big, huge machines and they make stuff, right? And there's a lot of grinding, right? There needs to be some lubrication so those, bits don't grind or burn or whatever it is that they do. I'm not a manufacturer, so, you can imagine 40 to 50% of these lubrications are fluorinated. And so that's one of the ways that things can get into your personal care products, into your food, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and this is the part that's really getting people because it's just like, what the hell? Remember, I was talking about organic. Well, for many, many years, the waste management companies in the United States have been selling something called biosolids to farmers. We also call biosolids sewer sludge. Now, what is this stuff? It's essentially everything that they pulled out of the water to make it safe, including pharmaceutical stuff, pesticide residue, PFAS. They put it all together. And because it has like such high nutrients, they've been selling it to farmers for decades. So the farmers have been spreading biosolids over their fields because it brings nutrients to the soil, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now we've realized that there was a lot of PFAS in those biosolids. And guess what? It doesn't go away. So last year, there was a farm called Songbird Farm, and they're in Maine, I believe, right? And they actually decided to test their soil. This is not something that you're supposed to or even have to do in organic. You don't have to test your soil. In New Zealand, they test the soil, but not in the United States. So, they tested their soil and found PFAS, and their jaw dropped to the ground because it was decades ago that this PFAS was spread on their farm. Before they ever bought it, it's still there. And yes, they were finding it in their, cucumbers or peppers or whatever else they were producing. So this is something that the organic industry is going to have to deal with because we have organic farms all over the country. Nobody is testing soil. Maybe they didn't own that farm in the 1950s, but you have to think about who owned the farm prior to you having it. And there may be some PFAS. And so this is something that the industry is going to have to grapple with, but they just haven't done that yet. I think they're starting to talk about it, but we don't have them testing. We don't have them doing any of that stuff yet. So just in the back of your mind, just remember that this is a big issue. And so when I say it's impossible to avoid all PFAS, that's what I mean. You know what I'm saying? Another thing to understand about the testing that I'm doing, not only is it spot checking, but I'm only testing at 10 parts per million. So I'm going to help you understand with a little bit of a visual. So we're going to go in parts per million, parts per billion, parts per trillion. Parts per million is a huge amount of PFAS. Okay. So it's not going to sound like a lot, but it is a lot. It's like a drop in a swimming pool. That's where I'm testing at the parts per million. A drop in an Olympic size swimming pool would be like parts per billion. And then parts per trillion would be like a drop in, 10 or 100 Olympic size swimming pools. So that gives you the tininess. In the parts per million, this is very high. Your water is restricted in California, for instance, at parts per trillion. So at parts per trillion, They're not even sure that is safe. They want to say 0 at parts per trillion below that as a safety level for PFAS. But I'm testing all the way up here. So when I'm finding it, it's a lot. So like, let's say I find a ketchup with that, or a spaghetti sauce or anything like that. These are not little numbers. These are actually big numbers. So don't let them fool you into thinking they're little. They're big. Okay. I threw a lot at you. I know you said you guys are sitting back there. When you started to turn off your screens, I wasn't sure if you were like crying or vomiting, like, because I was talking. But that's might be what I would be doing. And for as much as you ladies are feeling like listening to me talk about all this, imagine getting the labs, you know what I'm saying? And like looking at it and going, oh my God. So, but again, like I said, this is not a fun topic, but this is an important topic. And this is a topic that's going to impact us as Americans for decades and centuries, right? So this is a mistake of our generation that we're going to have to figure out. There is no easy answer to it. It just is. And that's why I think, or I feel like women are better apt to handle these types of things, because when do we ever have an easy solution to anything, right? When is it that we ever have a time that we don't have to grab each other's hands and just support each other, right? And kick and cry, right? But that's why I believe, again, the dudes weren't doing anything about this. I had to, right?
I love it. I don't think Emily walked away to cry or vomit.
I went to go take off my sports bra, and I went in and trashed all my food.
That was really quick.
Your pants.
I burnt my stroller.
Right.
So what is the impact on women? Like physiologically and biologically, what is the impact? Because we're very familiar with like total load, working with people that go through mold. We just talked to somebody last week and he was talking about that. And so I'm just seeing this as another level, like your body is already being compromised for the people that we work with. And then if they're being exposed to a lot of this, it's even more compromised. So what is the biological effect on women, especially?
I mean, fertile, fat, so infertility, fat, you know what I'm saying? We gain weight and just, it doesn't make any sense. An immune system, like autoimmune issues, you know what I mean? So for women, it's like, but our bodies are more forgiving, I would say. Like, we're just going to get really fat, right? Or something like that. You know what I mean? And we're going to, maybe your teeth are fall out, there's at really high levels, you start to lose teeth, you start to like have all kinds of weird things, but at these little tiny levels, it's more annoying things, right? Like, having an autoimmune condition isn't necessarily going to kill you, but it's going to be really annoying for the rest of your life, right? Cancer at the end of your life, that may kill you, but today it may not, because of the way cancer is. You could live for 10, 15, 20 years with cancer and maybe not have it. So for women, it's more of the annoying things that impact our life. You know what I'm saying? For men, it's just a lot worse for them. And the sad thing is, and the sorry thing is, the men wouldn't do anything about it, even if they found out. Most of the dudes that I know, you tell them about PFAS, they're like, yeah, whatever. And they're the ones that are getting impacted the most. And so it's like, they need us, right? I have one of my other advisors, her name is Shauna Swan. PFAS isn't her thing, but phthalates are, and phthalates are a plasticizer. Well, I find it ironic. So Shauna Swan is the one that has the taint sizer thing. I don't know if you guys, she was on the Rogan show like 2 years ago. I don't know if people are a fan of Rogan or not, but she was on the Rogan show, and she had this huge study, and she wrote a book, and it's basically about how male sperm has been degraded by 50% since the 1970s. And she has the proof. How does she have that? Oh, sperm banks. You can get the sperm and then look at the efficiency level. Does it work? Well, sperm in the 1970s was great. They were amazing. They'd swim, they'd do all that stuff. Well, now the sperm is a lot different looking. Some of the sperms have 2 heads and they swim around in a circle and they can't get anywhere. And this is disruption from all of the chemicals that men have had in their lives. It is impacting their sperm. So she's on the Rogan show with this taint measurer. Now, what's a taint? Men know what taints are. I didn't know what it was until I met Shauna. It's this piece of skin in a boy, and it's the distance between his anus and his scrotum. That's called a taint. Okay. Now she has a taint measurer that she uses for babies, right? Because part of the study was measuring women when they were pregnant. And then when the babies come out, measuring their penis, measuring their taint. Physiological differences in the women who had higher levels of phthalates in their body, which is another endocrine disrupting chemical that primarily is bad for men, and the taint, right? So she brings the taint measurer to the Joe Rogan show, and the guys are all over it. Like they're talking about taint. Imagine a 65-year-old woman talking about taints with Joe Rogan and whatever. So that's what she did a couple years ago. She went to Austin. And so because I know her, I know that these are very physiological differences that they're finding. So that's why I'm saying the male body is so much less forgiving. For women, when women are, disrupted by hormone disrupting chemicals in utero, things happen to us, but we're talking more specific pesticides or estrogen mimickers, bisphenols like BPA. That's an estrogen mimicker. And so for little girls, they will have their period at 9 years old and they'll be fatter. So that's kind of like where girls are going. We're getting fatter. We're having our period at 9 years old. By the way, I had my period at 9 years old, and I was like the only one in the school. So that was not common when I was a kid. Today, it's everywhere. They're finding girls as young as 7 years old that are having their periods. But when they look at bisphenols, which disrupt estrogen, that's what's happening to the little girls. So in one sense, it's kind of like the species are at stake right now because the first world countries of the world have major sperm degradation. The third world countries, not so much, but we don't know as much because they don't have, it's like they would have loved to put them in the study, but they don't have the sperm bank set up and all of the stuff to be able to go back that many decades to look. So it was more difficult. So she looked at Europe and she looked at, I think it was Australia, and she looked at the United States, and it was consistently 50% less virile for men. So, that's...
Wow.
Men need to pay attention to their own health and what's happening, but it took a woman to come in and fix it. So that's the funny thing. Shauna Swan, the boys didn't care, so she had to come and fight for their sperm, because they wouldn't do it themselves. She's a hero, but it had to happen because they weren't doing anything. The male scientists were like, oh yeah. Well, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I know them. I know what they're doing. They're very busy, but they weren't looking at sperm. She was the one that's looking at sperm and measuring taints and all kinds of stuff. God bless Shauna Swan.
I'm a jokester, and there are so many things I want to say right now that won't be appropriate. So I'm just gonna let Elizabeth talk.
Maybe after this, and then we'll have a glass of wine.
I'm like, no, just edit it out. It's okay. Well, no, I'm sitting here going, I have two girls. I know Emily is a daughter, and I'm like, 9?
Yeah.
9? No, that's not okay.
I know.
And one of my daughters already has chemical sensitivity. Like yesterday, she accidentally had a Mentos. We were doing a science experiment with soda bottles and Mentos, right? And she snuck one. And her entire face, because there's red dye in it, her entire face broke out. And even at school today, I have to tell her teacher, hey, she's not sick. She's had a chemical reaction, and fruit that we buy from many states, she can't eat because of the soil and because of the pesticides. And so I'm listening to this going, oh man, her body is already fighting off so much. I'm not ready for 9. That's nope.
Yeah. And it's not fun to have because I'll tell you, when you're 9 and you have your period at 9, well, I think it would be a little different now because you'd have more company, when I was the only person who had my period, kids didn't know what it was. Why is Leah carrying a purse at 9 years old? You know what I mean? The rumor mill was atrocious. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to tell them. Half those girls didn't even know what a period was. I wasn't telling people. And then, as you get older, you want to be sexually active before it's appropriate for you because you're a woman, right? And so you have those thoughts. Well, those were things that were happening to me at 14, which is no business doing stuff, the things that I was doing at 14. If I could go back, that's what I would do differently. You know what I'm saying? But it does come from maturing physically so early and just not being emotionally prepared for that. Yeah.
A lot of the symptoms that you were naming are symptoms that people get when they're exposed to mold too.
Mhm.
So
Ooh,
mold is also one of those buckets of endocrine disrupting chemicals, things that impact us in ways that I don't even think we're going to realize for decades and decades, of what's happening. There's a lot of these types of chemicals, and you're depending on who you are, what your DNA is like, we're all going to react differently to different things, right? So say you may react to PFAS, and I may react to mold, and someone else may be reacting to bisphenols or phthalates or another type of pesticide. But the truth is really what should be happening is we shouldn't be exposed to most of these chemicals at all, and it's just our government is just really behind in protecting us. And there's probably a lot of reasons why, you know what I'm saying? And then there's no simple answer to why that's happening. That's also really complicated, but that doesn't help us any as women. What we need information that's actionable, that I can take action and I can buy this versus that. What we need to be warned that, products like Oral B Glide could be your largest exposure to PFAS in a day. We need to know that information. And, as women, we have a family to feed. So that's why I'm here.
Man, I'm just thinking if you have all three of those things, right? Like if you're exposed to all three of those, your body is just on a warpath trying to fight it constantly.
Right.
That just makes me a little bit sad, mad. If you go back to the movie Home reference, but
so there is a test that they just came out with a test. They've commercialized a PFAS test. And they look at, there's two of them. There's one that looks at the most common older chemicals. And I think there's 12 or 14 of those, maybe 16. And then there's a bigger test that tests like 48 of them. I just did it the other day and I got my results back and, wasn't so happy. It's PFOS that I have in my body. That's a lot. I had non-detects for a lot of the stuff. I don't know if you guys you can't see this, but it's, I was lucky that I don't have a lot of things, but I definitely had PFOS, and, Leah, like, how is it Leah has PFOS in her body? Everybody has PFOS in their body, right? It's not just me. And imagine, the carpet that I was sitting on when I was a kid, you know what I'm saying? Like, it could be anything. It could be anything, and it builds up in your body. So there is a way to find out, and it's called Empower DX is the company. Like empower you DX, and it's called the PFAS exposure blood test. The little one is $200, the bigger one is $500, but I will tell you that is so inexpensive, because when we did our yoga pant investigation, we got 45 yoga pants and tested the crotch. My advisors wanted to do a body burden study to see, how much is getting into your body. And we realized that, first of all, it's really expensive. Like at that time, it was like $1,500 or more to do a blood test. So that gives you an idea of how expensive it was. But then when this company came out, and Empower DX has I believe Eurofins, that's where you're actually sending your blood is Eurofins. So it's a really reputable lab. They're $6 billion company. It's a humongous, lab. That's where you're sending your blood, and that's how you're getting these results. So you can get something like this if you want to spend the money. I do think that in the future, this will be covered by insurance in the future, but it's not today. So that will come right out of your pocket. I mean, I did mine. Arlene Bloom did hers the other day. She's another amazing scientist that does a lot on PFAS. And so I know a lot of people like me that have done the tests. I've compared my stuff and I'm a little bit lower, but I don't feel like that's good because I'm younger. So it's like Arlene Bloom has like 20 something years on me, right? And I'm I'm closer to her. So, and there's lots of stuff in my life before I even knew about this that we were doing. And it's the same is going to be for everybody. Now, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? The answer is they don't know. They really don't know what to do right now. They're trying to figure it out, which is why it's so important right now just to avoid as much as you can, because when they finally figure it out, it's going to be 10 years from now, right? And there's going to be way different types of problems that we're going to have. So just be in this boat as opposed to that one. And I got my test because I wanted to be able to talk about it. But the other thing that I want to do is I want to start doing platelet donations to see if I can bring this number down, because that's exactly what they did with the firemen. And they were donating platelets like once a month. I'm wondering if I could do that. And so I'm kind of looking at that. Like, I haven't wrote about it yet, but I'm definitely going to like spend a year or something messing with to see if I can bring it down, because if I do, and I can, and I can show everyone what's happening. Wow. Isn't that the best case scenario? Blood banks, I'll never run out of blood. Everybody's blood is needed. Right. I might be able to get rid of some PFAS. So fingers crossed on that one. That's kind of like what I'm personally going to start doing. I'll be able to report back when I feel like I've got, I'm acclimated with it. But right now it's just blood donation. So definitely donate your blood. It's another reason to donate your blood. Yeah.
I have a question. So when you donate the blood and the blood has your toxic load, is that now going into somebody else?
It's going to other people. But trust me, my blood is probably a lot safer than a lot of people's blood. So the answer is, when you donate your blood, every single person in the United States, and I mean like 99% of the people in the United States, have PFAS in their blood and their serums. So there's no way to get it around it. If you're getting a blood donation, there will be PFAS in that blood. There's no way around that. So it isn't the best scenario where I'm saying, I'm going to donate my blood. Yes, you can absolutely do that. Is that bad? I'm thinking, well, it's the only option we have. Right.
Well, maybe, could you request blood from like somebody in Europe, since they actually limit chemicals?
I don't know. This would be a good question for a doctor. I have no idea. But I would think that a European would have way less PFAS. Probably any other country than the United States would have way less PFAS. Yeah. So if you're going to get sick, go to Europe and get sick. And then go.
No,
Blood in my body.
surgery, you need a blood transfusion.
Yeah, blood donations, you will absolutely like that is something that they're going to have to figure out. Yeah, they're going to have to figure that out. They're not even close to even looking into it yet. But yeah. Yeah.
Have you tested like children's mattresses?
I am starting to do that now. I started testing crib mattresses. How do you know this? Are you psychic or something?
Yeah.
But I've only tested like 2 or 3 because they're big, expensive things, and I got to store them in my So what was happening, and I'm amazed that you guys were able to read my mind. So we had this, we just bought a new house a little over a year ago. And the garage is like this place where I wanted to store all of the crib mattresses, because first of all, the lab can't take the crib mattress. I have to cut into it and give them sections of it. And then I want to keep it for other purposes, if I'm testing other things. So I have like 6 mattresses. Is it 4 or 6 mattresses in there right now? But I am planning right now, I'm working on a mattress investigation, but I think it's going to take me a while because it's like so expensive, so I'm buying one and then doing it in like 1 month and then not the next month, because it's just a lot. So
Oh, cool. I'm excited for that.
I bet the Amish people have like 0 PFAS in their blood.
They would have some, but not as much as, we would have.
So if you
and the Amish, believe it or not, there's one mattress company, Naturepedic. So if you guys have heard of Naturepedic organic mattresses, literally everybody that makes that not everybody, they're all Amish. And oh my God, the stories about these people are hilarious. Like, okay, so during their lunch break, they like to go in the office and turn on Larry, Moe, and Curly, and they laugh hysterically at Larry, Moe, and Curly because they think it's hilarious and, constantly getting hurt. And so if you put other type of like more modern comedy in front of them, they don't get it. I don't get it. Like, because they have no context, right? So if you have a Naturepedic mattress, go to bed tonight thinking about the Amish, because that is exactly who put together your mattress stitch for stitch. And that's exactly who was laughing in the office during lunch break about Larry, Moe, and Curly. Yeah. Isn't that hilarious?
Emily, you have one of those mattresses, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. All my kids have Naturepedic mattresses. Yeah. I'm a big fan of that company. Yeah. And the ownership and stuff.
I spoke with the owner, and he's
Barry.
Yeah. and he sent me a mattress. So
Nice.
yeah, he's amazing.
Barry's the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy in organic, is what I would say. I mean, I worry about him sometimes because there's such wolves out there, right? I just want to protect Barry. He's so sweet. Yeah, but he started as a grandfather, so he was a grandpa. You know, he's an engineer. He's an environmental engineer by trade. And when he had grandchildren, he started looking at all of these things that were out there, and he was like, oh no, this is not going to do. He looks through the mattresses. Oh no, this is not going to do. So he started up a mattress company. So he made a mattress for his grandbabies to start, and that's how it started. And, you know, again, he's just decades before his time, and he's just the sweetest man. So yeah, it was made by a grandfather who was not going to give that, and he doesn't cuss ever, but I will for him, that shite to his grandson or granddaughter, you know? And that's how that started. But yeah, he's the nicest man in organic, is Barry. And he employs Amish. And so what they do is, of course, the Amish can't drive. So they send a bus out to them. So like at the butt crack in the morning, and I think they're in Ohio. Yeah, Ohio. So in the butt crack, at like 6 a.m. is when the bus goes out to pick up all the Amish people. They get on the bus and they drive to Naturepedic, and then they take them back afterwards. And so, you know, if you like the Amish, you should love those mattresses.
So either become Amish or move to Europe.
Yeah.
What we're getting from this.
Oh, they haven't tested the Amish. It would be interesting because a lot of them have jobs. And so by nature of their jobs, I don't know is the answer. Because, you know, it could surprise you, you know, because there are so many ways that it can get into your life that there's probably plenty of things that I've not even thought about. But Europe for sure, I would think would be better. But I mean, I have relatives in Norway. My relatives live right on the fjords, in Bergen. It's by Bergen. And my cousin used to be the head of the Bergen Times. So he was their director of their political section. And so when I was a kid, he was always coming to the United States every year. And he would stay at my uncle's house. They spoke Norwegian. I don't speak Norwegian. I'm like 2 or 3 words, and he would come and he would always spend like a week with us. And then he'd go to DC and do interviews and stuff like that. Well, every year he was like, I swear to God, what do you Americans put in this food? He's like, I get here to the United States and within half a day, he has a stomach ache and it doesn't go away, is what he's been saying to me for decades, right? That there's something going on with your guys' food. And, you know, they don't have that issue in Norway. And it's true though, because I've gone to Europe and I have some food sensitivities as well. And I've gone to Europe and just been like, I don't care. And nothing's happened.
And
You
you're
know?
fine.
Yeah. Just something's going on over there. Something good. You know, I don't know the specifics of what it is. What is it that I am not consuming over there in my food, in the air? You know what I'm saying? I wish I could just carbon copy it and bring it over here, but maybe I'll just have to move to Norway or something. Who knows?
There you go.
No, because I won't be able to do work here.
Love it.
Yeah,
And
but
we
they
give
have
you
a beautiful house on the fjords. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And it's so simple. It's not extravagant, but it's the nature that makes it so beautiful.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, where can people learn more about you? You got to give them the actual websites and let them know where they can learn more about you.
So go to mamavation.com to check out all of our investigations. So it's MAMAVATION. I'm also available at Mamavation on Instagram, on Facebook. If you want some support and love, find our Mamavation Facebook group. There's about 10,000 of us in that group. And let me see, on Twitter, I am Mamavation and Bookyboo. And I'm not on TikTok yet. Eventually I'll get over there. I just don't have time right now. And I think that's it. I'm pretty old school. I've done Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm boring. I've got so much to do.
I feel old when you say that, because that's where we are too right now. And I'm like, oh, that's old. Yep, that's right. Okay.
Well, this is going to come out the day before I turn 44. So if this comes out on October 5th, on the 6th, that's my birthday. So I'll be 44 that day.
Man. Well, congratulations on being young.
Thank you.
Just say. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've enjoyed this.
My pleasure, my dear. Thank you for having me on.